Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in '75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that day and year. Hello, people. Hello, hello. Yes, we are. We the people get to speak again. Hanging up my white hat. As we come to the end of 2012, let me send my condolences first to Acer Salinas, his friends and family. Acer, a young man from Santa Maria, graduate 5 years ago of Pioneer High School, died on Highway 166 about 24 hours ago. And I wish my sincere condolences to his family and his friends. We'll never know now what great things Acer could have brought to the world had he grown to full manhood and had a chance to live a life. Another life lost on Route 166, where some years ago, 2 police officers rushing to the rescue also lost their life. Well, this is our last show of 2012, and isn't it amazing? Barack Obama, who just picked up the new U.S. Senator from Hawaii, who happened to be the Hawaii Democrat state chairman, the one who signed the document saying that Obama 4 years ago was the choice of the Democratic Party, the nominee for Hawaii, but he did not include the word eligible under the law. Every presidential election before that, the 2 major parties have had a statement they send to the Secretary of State saying that this is our, and to the other public officials in the presidential, this is our candidate, he is our nominee, and he qualifies and is eligible to run for president, and he's our nominee of our party. This time, they left off the word he's eligible and just said he's the nominee of the Democratic Party. Now, Hawaii's Senator Inoue, a World War II veteran, and literally, lived till he died in office. And that's the way all these U.S. senators are. They just stay in office till they literally die in office. They cannot be voted out anymore because our system is failing. The American election system is completely failing. Less than 3 or 4% of the House of Representatives are ever challenged anymore and have an actual turnover in the office. Virtually like the incumbent here, Lois Capps, they cut her a snake-like district running along the central coast of California. She'll die in office, even though she only promised to serve 2 terms. She's on her, 3rd, 4th, 5th term now? She'll die in office. They'll never leave. The benefits are too good. The power goes to their head. And they just stay there. This has become an oligarchy of bank-connected, corrupt criminals in office. The 1 or 2 few decent people we had in office, like, say, Ron Paul, that wonderful guy, married 50 years to the same wife, Carol Paul, 5 functional children, many functional grandchildren. Them, the Republican Party didn't want him. No, they wanted a womanizing guy like Newt Gingrich or Romney. And right before the election, the Democrats were pandering this. Romney had a child out of wedlock by some other woman. Well, even without that, it was a given, an absolute given. The Southern Baptists would never vote for a Mormon. It was not going to happen. But besides that, what was really interesting about this presidential election year passed last month, which I refused to vote. I unregistered from California. It was a total waste of time to bother to vote because the elections are rigged. And that's coming from William Wagner, a man who voted from the trenches of Vietnam. But now the elections are stolen, they're rigged, they don't mean anything anymore. And this is a serious problem. This is a problem. Our elections don't mean anything anymore. Your Democrat, your Republican candidate are handpicked for you. Handpicked by bankers you never meet. Money that flows. You only have to look at the FEC reports and it's clear. Obama got so much money from the international bank gangsters on Wall Street, and Romney got so much money. But they knew that Romney couldn't win. That's why they had to beat down Ron Paul, make sure you didn't see that Ron Paul was the only sensible candidate who could beat Obama. Why? Because Obama broke his promise to get us out of war in 1 year? Or at least finish up the war in 3 years? Wars aren't finished in 3 years. We're going into a second term. Nothing's changed. The wars are going to continue, just like they would under Romney or McCain or Bush. The net change is zero. Zero change. Thank you very much for inspiring a bunch of lemmings to go to the polls and vote for whoever the bank gangsters want to see. Once the primary's over, it doesn't matter. They kill the best candidates in the primary, or they just run them off the sideline. And that's what happened to Ron Paul, the best presidential candidate we've ever had. When you toast New Year's Eve, toast to Ron Paul, because in my way of looking at things, he was the last chance to restore freedom and liberty in America, to restore constitutional limited government as the founding fathers who call themselves we the people. Those founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, Adams from New England, people that their names and what they stood for have long been forgotten. We've become Nazi America. Obama claims the right to ignore the Constitution, to rewrite the Constitution. One man. He claims the right to use predator drones to assassinate Americans or anybody. No trial, no hearing, no charges, just, I don't like you. And predator drone blast you away. America is far from its beginnings and has lost its way in this endless war against terrorism. You want to know who the terrorists are? The knock at the door from the IRS. The knock at the door from the FBI. Those are your terrorists. They have a bill now in Congress, championed by Obama and by many Republicans, that people who are labeled truthers can be put into a category called terrorists because they're terrorizing people with the truth. And the bill says they could be put in prison for life for telling the truth. This comes more and more like Nazi Germany. And people, if you don't understand that, then you don't understand what's happened in America. We should be celebrating the new year. But as I see it, there's only two possibilities left now. Ron Paul was real hope for a peaceful revolution back to the Constitution, back to the values that made this country great. Now the bank gangsters, they had to run from 1791 to 1811 with the first central bank of the U.S., which was pretty much owned by the Rockefellers and the European established, what I call bank gangsters. They have a lot of different names. They owned the Bank of England since 1694. They pretty much owned and controlled the Bank of Sweden since 1668. And eventually they marched all over Europe, setting up their currency issuing banks so they can control, cause depressions, cause recessions, or booms. And they know when it's going to happen because they make it happen. Then they cause wars. And if you don't understand this, then you have missed most of my shows. They cause wars, not because they feel one side is better than the other side. In fact, it was these international bankers through a New York phony bank that gave millions to Adolf Hitler. George W. Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush, literally carries satchels of $100 bills, cash, over to Adolf Hitler until he could use some of that cash to appoint himself a finance minister. Then they carried the cash over and gave it to Adolf Hitler's finance minister. Why would an American New York-based bank do such a thing? Because the bankers find it easier to deal with one dictator who's dependent on their currency than to deal with a true Republican form of government. And I don't mean that political party-wise. I mean a republic form of government where many of we the people get our voice heard. Today, none of our voices are heard. Children are kidnapped by CPS, and they tell you, oh, it's lawful, it's legal. They don't have a warrant usually. And if they do, they got a robo-signature from a judge. They should be sued, but the parents don't know that. So they surrender their children, screaming and crying. This is Nazi America. Happy 2013. Now that I've given you the good news, maybe we should deal with some of the bad news. The bad news is Ron Paul was probably our last chance for peaceful restoration. Now, it's more likely than not that in the push to push America over the so-called fiscal cliff, they say it's going to happen in 4 days. Gee, isn't that just around January 1 or 2? Just a few days before Obama's supposed to take his second term. And by the way, Orly Tates isn't done with her process of proving he's a fake president who did not qualify, never did qualify. And just in case nobody else in the world tells you, I'll tell you. She's got a hearing coming up January 3rd in the federal courthouse for the Eastern District of California in Sacramento. And basically, this is about proving Obama never was a legal president. Still isn't. So all the bad stuff he signed into law, I don't know. Is it invalid? My really question is anything Congress passes, anything, or your state house, or your city council, or your county supervisors, if the elections are rigged through these diabolical voting machines, as I proved years ago they were, caught Marlene Vlitch right here in Santa Barbara County doing something illegal, in my opinion, in the back office where it was locked, and that's what made it illegal. She was recounting the scanning votes through the Diebold scanning machine where nobody could see her. Nobody could witness it. To me, she should be in prison. But that's just my opinion. While I can still express my opinion under the First Amendment. You know, freedom of press, freedom of speech, soon that will be gone. Truth tellers will be in jail or prison for life. And shows like this will disappear. In fact, they're getting rare already. The corporate media lied to us about Michael Jackson's trial in 2005. No, they didn't lie just because Michael had a past history of doing something bad. The fact is, and it was proven in a book called Redemption by Geraldine Hughes, who was a secretary for the crooked attorney in Beverly Hills that pushed and trumped up all the charges in '92, the whole thing was bogus. She's working on a documentary right now. Then in 2003 comes Gavin Arvizo and this totally whacked out Janet Arvizo and this family of grifters. Tom Sneddon, I like to refer to him as Snake Sneddon. He slithers through the slime and creates false evidence. And I presented an affidavit